Welcome to Web3 and Me, presented by FLOLiO. I'm your host, Jeremy Weber, and on today's show, I'm going to go on a journey very deep into the world of Azurbala with creative director Emma Needell and Matt DeJesus from Tally Labs. Before we get going with this, very excited for today's episode. Please hit that like button, subscribe to our page so you can get more NFT content. Every like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. And most importantly, head over to FLOLiO.com. That is FLOLiO.com to take advantage of all the free NFT tools we have. We have portfolio management tools that provide more accurate portfolio values with Tradefloor and FMV. And we have a free browser extension that's going to help you make the best of your time on OpenSea. So with all that out of the way, let's bring on my guest for today. As I mentioned, I have the great Emma Needell, who is the head of the stories over at Tally Labs and Azurbala. And then I have Matt. You might know him as Bored Apewood, but I'm not going to call him by his monkey name today. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Very excited for today's show. Go ahead and hit those unmute buttons and we can get to it.
Thanks for having us,
There
J-Rob.
we go.
Yeah,
All
thanks,
right.
Jeremy.
Absolutely. So let's start off. I want to know more about you individually before we get into this whole crazy world of Jenkins and Azurbala that, has been growing over the months. So Emma, let's start with you. I know that you have experience writing movies, producing, give me a little bit of background there, how you found NFTs, and then how you transitioned into working with Tally Labs.
For sure. It's a good story, and I'm a storyteller.
Awesome.
So I'm excited to dive in. Jeremy is a fellow Coloradan. So I grew up on a cattle ranch in rural Colorado, 750 acres of nature, no television, no computers for a long time. And that really is the central part of that defined me. And on this ranch, I had only my imagination, where I created epic worlds, and I would draw maps of our cattle ranch, and suddenly the woods behind our house were no longer woods, but an epic fantasy land. And so world building is a pretty core part of who I am. Once I eventually did discover movies, they were proof that an outside world existed. And so I went to Hollywood to, make it as a filmmaker. Didn't know anybody, definitely had a few rough starts. But through that time, I wrote this original screenplay called The Waterman, which I know, Jeremy, you watched. Thank you so much. It's on Netflix, shameless plug. But The Waterman brings in a lot of what I love, and what I love about world building and creation in general, or creativity in general, which is a huge tie to nature, and using the natural landscape as both a visual background and a thematic background. And also having a story that's really focused on a theme. We talk a lot about, in our meetings at Tally Lab, the idea of the premise. And as a storyteller, I am always focused on the premise. And the premise really is just the point. Why are you telling this story, and what is the message? Waterman, loved that script so much, it became a film, which is really great. In my time as a professional screenwriter, however, I wrote another 5 professional screenplays, all original, meaning not based on IP or adaptations, for big studios and, in some cases, some really big directors. And each time we got near the finish line of being done with the script, they were cut by the studio. And that's sort of the heartbreak you feel as a screenwriter, especially when you're going for originality, for something that can only exist on the screen. You have to kind of live by the whims of whatever studio executive is in power. And I think a lot of us had a really kind of big time to reflect on what we're doing and why during the pandemic. And I certainly did. And what I realized, I took a huge step back from Hollywood. Literally, I moved back to Colorado. And I started thinking about all the general meetings I've had and all my professional meetings as a screenwriter, and the dead ends I kept hitting. And the big thing in Hollywood is everything is about IP, or intellectual property. And, took that lesson to heart. I ended up writing a book, which hopefully will be coming out soon. I can't tell a lot of details about that just yet. But then the other thing I really got interested was the idea of NFTs. And I have to thank my fiance right now for introducing me to a few projects that really, were the first in the space of being driven by story. And I dove right in, reading, getting into Discord, following on Twitter, and just hungry for story and interested in the space, but not fully understanding it. with all the projects I followed, and I'm not going to call any out, but with all the projects I followed, there was something that was missing that I couldn't put my finger on for why the stories hadn't taken off or why my own interest sort of fell off. And then it hit me once I found Jenkins, that all of these stories are missing the bedrock of story, which is character. Then Jenkins got signed by CAA, which is my talent agency, and I lost my mind. And I was like, great. Well, I also know I hopefully will be able to get a meeting with them. And so our agent set up a meeting for us. And in that meeting, honestly, it was one of those moments where I met Valet Jones, aka Jenkins, and Safa, and felt an immediate connection with these guys and felt really excited about a partnership. And they mentioned to me in our first or second meeting that they wanted to create a story world, and they had a hero image of this world, but that was about it. And it was maybe the right place, right time. This was in November, December of last year, but my creative juices just sparked. And I stared at that hero image for days, made a really great playlist, and just went into kind of a creative cave and came up with Azurbala. And it was some of the most freeing I've ever felt when it comes to creativity. And the other thing about this too, that I've had some time to reflect on, why was Azerbala so much fun, but also, really unlocked a creative side in me that Hollywood sort of dampened. And it was because there was no fear. There's a lot of fear in Hollywood. And that's what I experienced with all these screenplays that I wrote, that everyone was so fearful of making a movie that was a flop. And so oftentimes projects were just scrapped, which is why there's this reliance right now on IP generated content, so adaptations or reboots. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one who has noticed how many reboots there are. And some of them are amazing, but some of them you kind of wonder, why are you doing this? And so to summarize, Azerbala was just in working with Safa and VJ and the rest of the team, including Apewood. It feels like a real creative collaboration that is free from gatekeepers and free from fear.
That's a hell of a story to get things started. And 100%, I watched The Waterman last night, and it was refreshing to watch something new that I had no idea any of the backstory, any of the previous IP. It wasn't a reboot. It was just a new idea, and I thought that was fantastic. So, Matt, you're going to get to follow that up, which obviously she's a great storyteller, so good luck there. But kind of give me a little bit of your background, how you got into NFTs, how you created this persona of Apewood, who is beloved now on Twitter, and how you became involved with Azurbala.
This is the hardest job in the world. You see, I have to work with Emma every single day, and this is the hardest shadow to really.
You just got to ride her coattails and just not
really,
get in the way.
See, that's all it is. Like, Emma just makes me look really good, and that's it. But no, so yeah, no, so like Emma, I actually grew up in a small town, and we actually click on that in a little bit of ways. But I went to Carnegie Mellon University, economics and finance guy, and then my path took me to Wall Street for 5 years, where I was an investment banker, so TradFi background. But during that time, in 2020, obviously, like Top Shot started to come out, and we saw that kind of rise of the mania that was Top Shot. I think that everybody was just getting really crazy about it, and it was hard not to hear about it. And from my perspective, I guess I was an early right click saver. I had been buying like Ethereum and Bitcoin since 2017, but Top Shot comes out, and I didn't really get it at first, because like I can just watch these videos on YouTube, and like, why should I spend this money on why are people spending this money on Top Shot? So I guess, again, early right click saver, early skeptic. But then it just continued to go, and people continue to have fun with it. But then I think it really started to click when I saw Bored Apes come out in April and May, and just saw people on the Twitter timeline having fun. And I think this goes back to what Emma was saying about, the fear in Hollywood and some things like that. NFTs just make things fun. They make characters fun, because you have that vested interest in kind of creating yourself. And J-Web, to your point about how did I create Apewood? I literally was just, working 120-hour investment banking weeks, and I saw this ape on the floor that he was a cowboy. He repped the brand. So he was clearly loyal to the brand, and I resonated with him because I was living in New York at the time. I missed home, and you know, I always tweet about country music, but like I never actually liked country music until I moved out of the country. So so it was more so just like I missed home, and it allowed me to be kind of who I was away from home, from this kind of like pseudo anonymous type of environment that was a lot of fun. And from there, meeting a lot of cool people and just connecting and hearing people's stories. That's what makes me most passionate about this space going forward, and also what makes me super passionate about what we're doing here at Tally Labs and Jenkins the Valet.
Excellent. And then I know it's just been a few months since you got brought on, you know, how did that introduction get started? How did you, you know, take on this position as, I believe it's like Web3 strategy that you're focusing on with them?
Yes, I'm the technically director of Web3 strategy. With Tally. So it was it was in the works for a couple of months, but you know, ever since kind of getting into the space, I knew that this was where my passion was, and this was where kind of like I was having the most fun, where I was having the most like thought-provoking type of feeling. So for me, I wanted to get involved. I didn't want to start my own project because I thought that the space was really fragmented already as it was. But I wanted to join a really good team that I aligned with. And for me, that was two things. You know, since I have the TradFi background and an investment banker, I view things like who runs themselves like a business and what projects run themselves like a business that have long-term sustainability. And that's a small funnel of projects, right? And then even shortening the funnel a little bit more, who prioritizes their community first and foremost, and who is connected and aligned to their community. And I minted Jenkins the Valet, the Writers Room projects. I've been a holder since the beginning, was very close with the community, very close with, you know, I had the fortune to interact with Safa and VJ, see how they conduct themselves and how they conduct the long-term view of the project. And for me, it was just a perfect fit I see the 5-year plan, I see the longer term vision, and they always put the community first. So that's something that I was really focused on and want to really foster. So it was a perfect kind of alignment from both. Like, I think that myself, I think of things in different ways than a lot of other people do maybe in the space. And I've seen a lot of different projects and what has worked, what hasn't worked. But also from my perspective, the project, the team, everybody around, I think just fit exactly what I was looking for.
And I think that's awesome. And it really hits on in my opinion, the two things that are going to get a project through this bear market that we're in, which is, you know, having a strong business understanding and background. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of projects in the next 3 to 6 months basically declare bankruptcy, like run out of money. And then also the community to have that long-term vision, who isn't just looking, you know, because no one got into Jenkins thinking they were just going to make a quick 5x flip, as everyone's trying to do these days on all this crap out there. So I think what you were looking for is what's also going to survive through these hard times. So, you know, I think that's pretty great. So Jenkins started about a year ago, correct?
Mm-hmm. In August.
Mm-hmm.
In August. Okay. So Jenkins began. There is all the, you know, NFTs there with the ticket, the key, the valet stand, the Wagme yacht, all that good stuff. How did, you know, Azurbala first get going? Like, was this, Emma, something that you brought in, or they had this idea previously and then you began to work with them? Like, give me a little bit of a rundown there.
So in one of our meetings, they had a hero image, and it's the image that's, you know, the main image in our Discord right now. It's I think it's in the Azurbala Twitter profile picture on their Twitter account. They had that. They had this amazing hero image of the day and then nighttime, and VJ, he was Jenkins at the time, VJ and Safa said, we really want to create a story world in our own unique avatar collection. And, you know, we want the next Jenkins to come from this world. This is what we have. And again, I took this hero image, and it's beautiful, right? This is what you see behind me is the Syndicate, which is one of the factions of this world now. But it's beautiful artwork. And there's this really beautiful, the daytime is gorgeous, right? It's set in a jungle, lots of greens, very vibrant, very alive. And then at night, it takes on this interesting kind of purplish blue hue, almost like the Northern Lights or something. And I looked at that image for a very long time with an amazing playlist that I curated. And that's the first thing I do also as a writer. Before anything else, I make a playlist. Music to me is sort of the gateway into creativity, especially world building. And then from there, I talked a little bit about the premise. From there, I really wanted to have a clear premise. And Abe, what do you think? I feel like we should maybe keep our premise a little bit under wraps because we want people to experience the story with us.
Absolutely.
But yeah. And I have to say, Abe Wood is a hell of a storyteller too. A lot of props there. But so the whole sort of intent for the world really started around this premise or this theme or this North Star. And from there, knew we wanted to have a resource, knew we wanted to have an economy, but also equally important as someone who, was really paying attention to the space and involved in a few projects myself as sort of the kind of community member, not project leader. I knew I wanted people to feel ownership over the characters they were making. And so the intent was create a sandbox. We have a direction for the story. We have intent, but I'm really excited to see what you do, Jeremy, with your Azurian, or what someone else does with their Azurian and the characters they make. And we want to create tools where really, truly, the next Jenkins comes from Azurbala. That's a huge part of how this world was built.
And J-Web, I think that what's really cool about Azerbala, that's actually very different than pretty much every other PFP project that you think about, is when you think about most other PFP projects and NFT projects at large, they launch the PFP, they launch the art, and then retroactively will build the world around the project. So you're basically integrating the world to the character or like the art itself, versus Emma and team have been thinking about this world, Azerbala, for months and months on end now, and have built out this really crazy kind of fun. I would urge people to go check out the website. It's a lot of cool experiences. And from there, we're going to launch the PFP and integrate it within the confines of the world and direction and geographies, etc. So it's kind of like a little bit different of integration cycles, which I think is pretty cool.
Okay, I had the website. I'm going to pull it up real quick. We're going to screen share. I want you guys to show me. You don't need to dive deep into everything if you don't want to, but kind of show me a few things that you find to be the most interesting. So we all good here. You can see this beautiful website you guys created. Okay, so
here's the hero image actually too. That's what VJ and Safa first shared with me.
Okay, so that right here, that's the first thing that they showed you.
Yeah. And then there's a nighttime version too. And I saw that. I was like, I have to do justice to this image. It's so beautiful.
So we have Azurbala laid out for us right here. And we have these different points that you can kind of, dive deeper into. We have the sprawls. We have the monastery. Give me a few things that you want me to check out and pull up right now that you find to be, I don't want you to spill too much, but just give me a few things, a few points on this map that you want me to check out.
I can dive in, Apewood, and jump in whenever you want. Let's start with the monastery. And there it is, right high up in the mountains. So one thing that's really important to know about Azurbala is how ancient it is. Azurbala has existed for thousands of years. And only recently have they really become a force in the 21st century. And that's thanks to a refinement process of a natural resource that grows there called marrow. And marrow has launched them into the 21st century with a vengeance. However, there's a lot of ancient history and ritual to Azurbala, and there's no better place to start to learn a little bit about that ancient history, and there's more to come. But really, to learn about it, start with the monastery, the keeper of all secrets.
Okay. Ape, would anything to add to this portion of it?
I think that what I would say about the monasteries is it's not necessarily like the sexiest faction, and it's not necessarily the one that jumps out on the screens. I think that a lot of people immediately kind of jump to House Calypso, or they jump to the sprawls. But like Emma said, the monastery is there's so much story and lore just based on the history and the kind of like fact that everything kind of comes from the monastery. I find it really interesting. And Emma didn't touch on the three temples, but if you scroll over and you hover above and you click on those, you see the differences of the three temples and how they kind of interact and the backgrounds of each one and what they do. And I think that kudos to Emma. I think she did a great job naming them. I think that they're awesome.
I mean, I definitely want to be an Azure monk, which that's the most holy temple. It's way high up. It's the highest one on the mountaintop, and no one knows what goes on in there, and no one's allowed inside unless you're an Azure monk. So
okay, so real quick, how do you, as this all unfolds, and like I said, only tell me what you're comfortable with. How do you become a monk in this? Like, is that going to be something that like you mint the NFT and it's just randomly generated and then you have to like go buy it, or can you like do each of the NFTs have like started with like a blank slate and you like kind of build your character from there?
Yeah, so in Azerbala, all Azurians are born common, and that's part of the lore. You're kind of like you each have the ability to build who you are, and eventually, you will eventually kind of lead up and choose a faction. There might be like different requirements for each faction to get into, different hurdles, pending on which one. Like House Calypso might have different hurdles to get into than the Sprawls or the Monastery, etc. But all Azurians themselves are born common, and they're all Azurians are governed, and it's kind of like this idea of these factions all pulling and pushing to be that kind of like top spot of Azurbala.
Okay, so this is essentially at a base level like an RPG to some extent. Like you're all born the same, and you go through these different trials, tribulations, whatever, and you create this character. I think that's really cool. Give me somewhere else on this map that we can head to that, I know you said House Calypso is like one of the sexier ones. Like, give me something else that you think.
I think that the Syndicate, like, it speaks to a lot of kind of like the Syndicates. I think of it as like the center of the economy in Azerbala, and it's the artisans, it's the travelers, it's kind of like the goods and
the scientists.
And the scientists, and it's like all of the, it's kind of like I would say the center of commerce in Azerbala, and there's just a lot of.
Who would have thought the TradFi guy would love the center of commerce?
Yeah. So Emma had mentioned that this resource Marrow is Azurians realized that they could harvest it and use it to power the city, and that propelled them into the 21st century and kind of spurred their own technology revolution. But also, within the confines of Azerbala, Marrow governs kind of like the tokens and the coins within the space as well. So, we see kind of like the Syndicate as a center for commerce of that kind of with that token and, buying and selling and reselling kind of goods and services here.
Okay. Emma, give me one more place for us to go check out now.
Let's check out the Marrow Glades.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are the Marrow Glades. The marrow, the substance that powers, Azurbala, and pretty much in the form of a bioluminescent electricity. It's a very biophilic city, right? But these are the Marrow Glades. This is where it all comes from. And marrow is found in the Azur root. And the Azur root grows deep, deep underground and is responsible for processing naturally all dead and decaying matter. So it's really important. It's an important part of the ecosystem, but it's also extremely valuable. And here you can see the Marrow Glades. And this is where Azurians can work to harvest marrow from the Azur root and then sell it to be refined. There's a lot of lore around the Marrow Glades, and in many ways it forms the backbone of the Azurian economy. But it also, it's a place where sort of like almost a gold rush feeling where dreams can be made or broken. There are also some of the best singers in the world and best lyricists in Azurbala come from the Marrow Glades. It's very common to hear harvesting songs sung. It keeps people on pace with work as well. So I think this is a really great one to see, there's a cost, right, to progress. And we're seeing what this cost looks like, at least for the rainforest.
Okay. Abe, any final things you want to touch on before I go ahead and stop the screen share here?
What I think is really cool about the marrow glades, and I think that Emma touched it in her introduction, with, you know, the idea of being connected to nature. I think that that's an underlying conflict that is super relatable to the real world. I mean, we're seeing it with climate change and everything that we have today. And also, but it's also kind of a really cool, like, great stories have great conflicts. And this is one of the many kind of conflicts that will appear in Azerbala. And you know, the fact that, you know, I think that we can all empathize with, like, you know, greed and versus, you know, the idea of conserving a very, very important resource for not only the economy, but for Azerbala at large.
Okay. So all great stories have great conflict. They also have great villains involved in that conflict. Mm-hmm. Is there anything, you know, that you can share with us regarding that? Because I love villains. I think that they're so cool. They're much deeper than people want to give them credit for. Like, what can you share with us about who, you know, they're going to be going against in Azurbala? Who are the Azurians going to be kind of battling with?
I'm also a huge villain fan. There's a great saying, I don't know who said it, some great writer, but a villain is the hero of their own story. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind, that all villains think that they're in the right, or they're doing the right thing. And it could be extremely selfish, but the right thing for a selfish person is to help yourself. And that's how I've approached all the characters. Now, one big thing, and, you know, this is sort of relating to the premise, which we'll get to later as the story unfolds in real time. But one thing to keep in mind is that in Azurbala, there's a spectrum of good and evil. And people and characters can shift on that spectrum. An Azurian might start off more kind of good or virtuous, and through events in their life end up becoming more villainous. And I want to really, with the Azurian legends we have, which are the characters that Tally Labs owns and controls, all of them are somewhat on that spectrum of hero and villain. They all are on that spectrum, but it can shift. And my aim, our aim, is to create characters so even if they're villains, they have an understandable goal and motivation. And that is really clear. You know, we were talking about what makes a great story. Premise is definitely one, but when it comes to character, I can't emphasize this enough. There are three things which make a great character and thus a great story. And that's a goal, a motivation, and a conflict. So a character needs to have a goal. They have to want something. They have to have a reason why, their motivation. And then finally, something needs to stand in their way. And every single Azurian legend has a goal and a motivation and something standing in their way. And the way they go about dealing with that conflict may have a villainous means to what they see as a virtuous end, but every single character needs to at least be empathetic.
Yeah, and J-Web, I think that, you know, Emma hit on a lot of great things on what makes a great character. And I'd certainly agree. I think that, you know, dynamic characters and evolution of characters governed by their kind of core desires and their core wants is huge for, you know, what is a great story. But, you know, thinking more so for our community and the product, we view ourselves kind of as a software-enabled Web3 media business, and connecting the software where we really want to provide our community and ourselves with the tools available to create their own characters and see their characters develop over time. You know, not everybody's going to be a hero at the onset. I think that that's what's great. People might align with, you know, certain, and I think that's what's kind of cool about the legends is they set the stage for what characters look like and how they act in Azerbala across the different factions. So there might be like some inspiration of that when you're developing your own character, but we really want to be thoughtful about helping our community and helping kind of people connect to and build with their Azurian as well.
So these legends, is that all going to be revealed once everything really starts to kick off with Azurbala? Okay, and when the hell is that going to be? Because you guys have me like really intrigued right now, and I don't feel like waiting a whole lot longer for this.
Yeah, so on the timeline, obviously the book mint is on Monday, and it all starts with the book Bored and Dangerous. It's part of the lore a little bit, but in the sprawls, the crime lord Fallon, he rules by controlling education. So books aren't allowed in the sprawls. But to receive an Azur root that, Emma had mentioned before, an Azur root is going to be your mint pass for an Azurian. You will burn your book NFT, and you receive the Azur root that can eventually become your Azurian character. So book mint is early next week on Monday, July 11th. Think about the burning the books towards the end of July, and think about redemption window for your Azurian kind of mid to late August.
Okay. And is that going to be the only way to get an Azurian is through the root, and the only way to get the root is from burning a book?
Right. Or secondary markets.
Or secondary markets. Yeah, of course. Okay. Very cool. All right, man. I have so many questions still. So for you, Matt, coming from a TradFi background, what has been, some of the biggest surprises, like getting involved in this whole storytelling process, learning from Emma, learning from the whole team? Like, what are some of the things that you've really taken away from this, and that have you seen yourself kind of, grow in this industry now?
So I think that for me, I always mention this, but like, I don't think that the best investment banks and the best like kind of TradFi kind of you're pitching your client not on like the numbers, not like on the model outputs, and like those don't mean anything, right? Like you put numbers on a page, they don't mean anything. They only mean something when you contextualize them within the confines of why it matters for the client or why it matters for them and why they should care about it, which you frame that as a story, right? So it's a different type of story. It's not nearly as creative as, all the temples and the monasteries that Emma can come up with. So I think that why Emma and I are a really good team and we mesh well with the rest of the Tally team is Emma is this kind of creative powerhouse who knows no bounds with regard to coming up with really cool lore and really cool narratives. I come in with a little bit more of a kind of process-oriented how to package things background. So when you have that kind of two-headed kind of monster of how we work together and how we think about rolling out our strategy of Azerbala long-term, because we think, again, about great stories, you don't reveal all your cards at once. Like Star Wars wasn't made. They didn't release every single movie up front, or they didn't, like Harry Potter, didn't release every single book up front. It was that progression and thinking about that phase progression over a long time that made it so great. And that's how we're thinking about, phasing out this world and story that Emma has built.
Okay.
Although I have to give Apewood and Matt some credit here. It's been a joy working with you because you do really understand story to your core. And let's just everyone gets, I can't hype this project enough. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to, I really believe, create some really cool stories here. And Apewood is a huge contributor to story on this front.
It's really cool because I think that, we're all really excited about it. And, we really thrive and hope to be building alongside our community. And Ballet Jones, VJ said this earlier, but, thinking longer term about the writer's room and what that means and who we are. We view ourselves kind of as a global coalition of imagination and storytellers. And when you have that kind of decentralized form of media and you have that platform to create, a lot of cool ideas can come out, because how do you put kind of a cap or a max on imagination, on ideas? And I think that's what's a lot of fun and makes every single day different and great.
And so, we are through this last thing I'll say, sorry, Jeremy, through the leadership certainly of VJ and Safa and Apewood and Thread Guy. I mean, the entire team, but especially Thread Guy, Apewood, Safa, and VJ, there is a ton of care for community. And again, all of us at Tally, but I think, especially these four people who are leaders in this space as well, the community is so cared about and loved with these people. So I want to call that out, how much love there is.
I think that's awesome. So, this really is changing the way that stories are created, and, bringing a lot of people into a process, which, I'm sure is great, but can have some negatives as well. What are some of the biggest challenges that you guys have faced, when you have the writer's room for Bored and Dangerous and you have people throwing out ideas, things like that, and you have this New York Times bestselling author writing the book, like what have some of the bigger challenges been with both Bored and Dangerous and Azurbala?
So on Bored and Dangerous, obviously so Azerbala we haven't launched yet. So I think that we're trying to front run and think about those issues and try to solve for those issues before, obviously we want to be really proactive and thoughtful and deliberate in how we roll out Azerbala. But talking about Bored and Dangerous, and Safo was sharing this anecdote earlier on a Spaces that I thought was amazing. So if you think about what happened with Bored and Dangerous, over 4,000 apes licensed their IP and licensed their apes to appear in some form or faction in this Bored and Dangerous community generative novel. And not only that, but I think that if you looked back, over 60% of those apes, they wrote backstories for themselves on the Jenkins the Valet Writers Room platform. So they created their backstories around who their characters are, where they were born, what challenges they faced, who they were. So you have this kind of innate desire to connect to your character. And I think that's an amazing litmus test for what you were saying earlier, J-Web, about, this idea of decentralized media and people putting in kind of their ideas. But moreover, if you think about who was writing it, Neil Strauss, 10-time New York Times bestseller. But what I found really interesting was at the Jenkins the Valet NFT NYC event, Neil Strauss showed up. But not only showed up, he was keenly searching out apes who had licensed their characters to yachts, who are the main characters of the Bored and Dangerous book, because he knew them so well. He knew these characters. He was like starstruck by them. He had read every single one's backstory. He had read like so many people's backstories, and he was so excited to tell their stories that he was going around and was searching out everybody and everything that was kind of connected to these stories. And I thought that was amazing. So you have one kind of these ability of people to tell their stories and desire to do that, but also from the top, again, kind of a focus on implementing these character stories within the confines of, Neil Strauss is an amazing novel writer, and the community voted on the direction of the story as well. So, I think that all in all, it was a really great kind of case study on how media can be formed in this Web3 environment.
That's really cool. Emma, were you at NFT NYC as well? Did you get to kind of meet Neil Strauss and some more of the team and, all the active participants from the community?
I was. Yeah, it was a really great event.
Yeah, that's awesome. You don't hear about that in any other, avenue of storytelling or really any media. Like that's just so cool. And I think that's what gets people so excited for NFTs and the direction that everything is headed, and why, if all you're focused on is trading NFTs, like you got to look at the bigger picture, maybe take a step back and see that like this has the opportunity to change a lot of things in many positive ways. So I think that's really cool.
One kind of test I've kind of done for myself is just to see, can I pitch this to someone who doesn't know anything about NFTs, and will they get it? Thinking about business too, because it is a business, and you have to think about it this way. And I have to say, I have a lot of friends and family who are like, oh, the Bored Ape something? Yeah, I've heard of them. But they all understand what it is we're doing when I give them the pitch. Like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And I think when you can pitch an idea, especially in this world of, where IP is king, and if YouTube decentralized distribution, I think this is decentralizing content development, which is a really interesting place to be right now. But when you can explain it to someone who doesn't know or doesn't have a lot of interest in NFTs, and suddenly their eyes go wide and they go, wait a second, can you help me get set up with a wallet? This sounds really interesting. Like that's a good move.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, at kind of the forefront of everything that we do, we're story people, we're character people, we're book people. But we also are really, really thoughtful about how story integrates with product and how story integrates with the tech and the software. And, kudos to, Othan Peroni and Robes, who are our head of product and head of engineering. but we're very close knit on how we roll out our tech platforms. And I think that licensing platform that we did with the writers room and being able to vote on the community generative content and write your backstories, I think that platform itself was a really great scalable type of solution in this space.
That's awesome. So earlier this week, I had on, I don't know if you or either of you are familiar with Huxley, the Huxley Saga by Ben Morrow, but he and his community manager jumped on, and it really seems like the best way to bridge the gap between people who have no idea what NFTs are, who don't even like NFTs, is through this storytelling and through this, interacting in media, and they're creating their game and their movie, and you guys are having the book coming out and all these different things. And it seems like over the last 6 to 9 months, we've been looking for how do we get more people who don't want to have anything to do with NFTs to get involved. And I think that you guys are really onto something with this. I think that's a really huge opportunity and something I know you guys don't take lightly. So very excited to see how that plays out.
If you think about humans at our core, generations and millennia over time and history, like all the way back to the Egyptian hieroglyphics, to the ancient Romans, to the Greeks, to everybody, to war times, everybody would tell stories. And like stories are kind of core to who we are as humans. And I think that Web3 and NFTs kind of enable the next phase of storytelling. I think that social media kind of allowed you to portray your own story to the world in a sense. Web3 and NFTs allow you to own the character that is in the story of that you're creating.
Yeah. And Emma, Ben basically echoed exactly what you said, as far as like, he was tired of waiting for stuff to get made. He wanted to take, that more proactive approach. Exactly basically what you said, as far as like getting frustrated with those, 5 or 6 scripts that you wrote, getting to the finish line, but not getting made. So I think that that's providing such a huge opportunity for people who, don't have the connections that are needed to get all of their stuff made, but still have great ideas. So I think that's really awesome. I want to be respectful of your time. I want to close out on a few final things. What are you most excited for with this, Emma? Like, you've created this incredible world, and it's going to unfold over the coming months and years even. But like, what do you want people to keep a lookout for from the jump?
Mm-hmm. There are probably a few answers to that question, but there's one in particular I want to focus on. And it's a realization I had on set for The Waterman, and also on set for a film that I directed recently. And it's that while I love storytelling, writing in particular is quite a lonely job. You're in your own world, you're coming up with things. At times you think you're brilliant, at times you think you're the worst in the world. That's part of the fun. But really, being on set opened my eyes to what it is I love about storytelling. And then getting the films I worked on out into the world, into theaters and onto Netflix. And it's the sharing of the story. Jeremy, you said that you watched The Waterman the other night, and you shared with me what you really liked about it. That's why I do it. I do it so I can hear how it made other people feel. And I do it. I want to be a storyteller to evoke emotion and thoughts in strangers and feel a connection with people I may never meet in real life. And equally important, to feel that same kind of kindred spirit connection with my collaborators. And typically on a film, your collaborators are your actors and your crew and everyone around you. And it becomes this little family, and it's a beautiful thing. And film shoots in particular are very intense periods of a lot of hard work. And everyone goes away feeling like, you've been through some sort of trench warfare, and you're bonded for life. And that's very true. At least when it's good, it happens that way. But what's really fun about Web3 is that with a film, you keep it secret for so long. You have your script and it's secret and it's watermarked with everyone you share it with. And then you get on set and you only see the sides, meaning the scenes you're shooting that day. And some members of the cast and crew may never actually read the full script. It's also secret. And then in the editing room, no one sees it until it's finally ready to be unveiled. But with Web3, we are building alongside our audience. And our audience is not just our audience, but they're also our co-writers. All of this is happening in real time. And it's sort of the synthesis of everything I love about storytelling and creativity. It's amazing.
Okay. Apewood, you can follow that up again with
another.
Good luck.
Go first one of these times. I'm just kidding.
yeah. I like trying to follow up Emma's enthusiasm and passion is just a really tough job, buddy.
I mean, and she stole my answer, to be honest, at the end there, because I look, like we said it at the beginning. I think that what's really cool about this project is the connectivity with community and the actual like true connectivity with community and the frequency with which that we connect to our community. I think that that's different than most other projects. I think that we make it a point to do the right thing for the community always and to frequently be connecting with them. Like, I mean, we hired, like myself and Thread Guy, are people who came from the community. You know, so people who come from within are like the community. We are the community and the community is us. And that's what I'm really most excited about. I really am focused on prioritizing the fun. I think that you saw that today, kind of the fun on the timeline with the Where's Jenkins reveal kind of on the book NFT that kind of took over, and Bored Apes were looking around and had fun looking for their NFTs. So prioritizing the experience, prioritizing the fun, prioritizing the story, and integrating that within really cool products that are scalable and can last long term. I think that, you know, NFTs are a really, really great medium for storytelling, but the buck shouldn't end there. There should be really cool kind of software underlying that. There really should be cool tech platforms, and there's better ways that we can integrate things across, you know, multiple different platforms that I think that we're being really thoughtful about, and what I'm really excited for.
Okay. There is a lot to look forward to coming out from Tally Labs. So just a reminder, everyone, on, was it Monday? The book minting begins there, which is very awesome. Do people who hold Jenkins NFT, do they get a free mint for that?
Yeah. Okay. So if you hold a Writer's Room NFT, you get one book NFT claimed for free. And you also get to mint on the write list for a 25% discount to wherever the resting price of the Dutch auction lands. And we don't have to get into all the mechanics of the Dutch auction or the mint itself. I would point people to the Jenkins the Valet Twitter page, where there are kind of comprehensive write-ups on that, just because being cognizant of time. But the Writer's Room, we wanted to make sure that we prioritize our Genesis 6,942 Writer's Room NFTs. Because there is a little bit of game theory that we haven't mentioned. I mean, we talked a lot about Azurbala, but and you can burn your book to take that journey to Azerbala for an Azurian profile picture and character. But also there's the other end of the stick where you can stake your book NFT to Hawthorne, which is a DAO that we're creating. And basically, you'll control the direction with governance tokens of kind of the future of IP, future of media, and kind of the direction of, you know, stories. So there's, you know, a little bit of game theory behind, do you burn your book to take that journey to Azerbala, or do you stake the book NFT to the Hawthorne DAO?
Okay. I love it. So many layers to all this. Emma, any final words for everybody?
I hope to see you in Azurbala. We're going to have fun.
Okay. All right. I can't wait. If you haven't watched The Waterman on Netflix, just take an hour and a half tonight and go do it. It's such a good movie. I know it'll mean the world to Emma. My wife and I both really enjoyed it. So go check that out. Just a reminder, please like this video from today. Subscribe to our channel. We put out videos 3 to 4 days a week. I love talking NFTs and being able to talk to creators such as yourselves. So thank you guys so much for being here today. This was a blast, probably the fastest 50 minutes of my life. So for the entire team at FLOLiO, thanks all of you for watching and being here. Emma, Matt, you guys are the greatest. Hope to have you back on as Azurbala continues to evolve. All right.
Really appreciate it, J-Web. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Everybody have a great night, and we will see you next time.